Yep.
Okay, well, after we moved down here to Thatcher when I was 8, and during the next year or so, I got acquainted with neighborhood kids, and one of them was a girl named Olive Farron who lived a couple of houses down, and we used to play together. And at her house, I ate head cheese, and I liked it. But later, when I was older, I read a recipe for head cheese, and I can't believe I even ate it. But that's not the story. One day, she and I were out in their backyard, and it was way back at the end of the lot, kind of far away from the house, and we climbed up in a tree. And we played up in the tree for an hour or so, and the sun started to go down. It was time for us to go home for supper. So we tried to climb down the tree, and we couldn't do that because it was too far between the limbs. There was no toehold, no way. How did we get up there? I don't know, but we couldn't get down. And we called and called and called, and nobody heard us. So there we were, stuck up in the tree, and it was going to get dark. So I guess we remembered our primary lessons, and we decided we'd say a prayer. So we did. And as we started down the tree, there were cut out toe holes for our feet to get down. Just as plain as could be. So anyway, that was a significant time for me about prayer. So that's all. Next question.
You were 9 at the time?
About 9.
Yeah. So did she notice that too?
Yeah, she climbed down right after me.
And did the two of you talk about it at all, or?
I don't remember talking about it. We just got down and went home.
It was a powerful spiritual experience.
It was because the toe holes were so there,
Yeah.
like it had been chipped out of the tree limb.
Yeah.
So I never went back to check if they were still there. Time out.
Okay. So teenage years, where were you living? What was the setting?
We were living here in Thatcher. But another thought just came to me. From the time I was in the first grade, I had to have a boyfriend. And the one in the first grade was this guy named Roy Brakefield, that had a finger missing, and I was afraid I was going to have to grow up and marry him. When we moved down to Thatcher in the third grade, then I had a boyfriend. And one day he, after school, Carolyn Harms and I were in the room getting ready to walk home. She's another friend down the street. And he came in and had a bracelet for me. I said, "Oh, no, I can't take a bracelet." Carolyn said, "I'll take it." So I said, "Oh, well, I'll take it." That was Tanner Mickelson. And
Did he die?
he died a couple of years ago.
He smoked all of his adult life.
Yeah, poor thing. In those primary years, we had primary dances
Really?
almost every week after primary. And we had music, and we danced and danced and danced and danced. And one day, I danced 32 sets with Tanner. Isn't that amazing?
A set is a song?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
It must have gone on for hours, the dance.
And he was an excellent pianist.
Yeah, it was so good. But so then, when we were up in the 5th and 6th grade, it was a challenge to all the girls to get out the door fast enough to grab a swing, because then one of the boys would come along and you sit in the swing and they stand to the side and pump.
Push you.
And that was kind of fun.
Yeah.
And then after school, in those grades, 5th and 6th grade, sometimes we stay after school and pay post office. You know what post office is?
What does
Sort
that
of.
What does that entail?
I can't remember, except that at some point you had to kiss the boy.
She
And-
was good at that.
And the only time I remember that happening was with my cousin Alden Curtis. And I kissed him on the cheek, and it was so smooth, I was so surprised. He's dead, too. Everybody.
He drank himself to death, literally.
Well, anyway, so then, after Tanner, he was my boyfriend still up to freshman in high school. But it didn't entail anything except in my mind.
Yeah.
I mean, you never went anywhere and did anything with anybody. You just, in your mind, you had a boyfriend. But I was a friend to all the boys. It was easy.
Hang on.
Easy.
Leona,
Uh-huh.
this is Nona on the phone. She says that's what it says.
Anyway,
Yes.
when I was in the 8th grade, one of my second or third cousins was a girl named Leona Moody. And in the 8th grade, she was quite mature looking and acting. Cute little girl. And she was dating the high school boys in the 8th grade. And
Who is that?
Leona Moody.
Oh, yeah.
And I was complaining to Mother that she got to date and I didn't. But clear up till then, I was just still a skinny little girl. I wasn't, I didn't look like a lady. And Mother said, well, you just watch, she says. When a person starts to date, it's about 4 years until they get married. So you don't want to start dating until you're 4 years away from getting married. And I thought, well, that makes sense. And so Glenna got married when she was a junior in high school. It made a true thing out of my mother's statement.
The math works.
Yeah.
Who'd she marry?
A guy named Gene Shirley. It didn't last very long. They had one child and then they divorced. And she didn't marry again for years and years and years. She married that guy named Waldo Jackson. And they both died. So when I was
Is anyone still alive?
Not many. So when I was a freshman, there was a guy named Leon Reed. He was called Ozzy. And he was my boyfriend for a little while. But all we ever did was walk home from school together. He gave me a ring once. I guess and a bracelet. And he was really a nice guy. But he was a senior and I was a freshman. That was kind of funny.
He married a Korean girl, didn't he?
He did.
And she died.
And then, well, they divorced too. And she died. And he died. Everybody died.
She was the kiss of death.
In high school, it was easy for me to be friends with everyone. But there's one thing that makes me really sad. We had a group of girls that we felt was our group.
Yeah.
There was 8 or 9 of us.
Did that include my sister Lily?
Yeah. And I have a picture of us because when we graduated, Lila Lee and Mona, their graduation gift to us was a picture of all of us. We went up and had it taken, and we all have a picture, which was very sweet. But years later, we had a reunion, a high school reunion, and I was talking to a girl named Peggy Palmer that I was friends with, but we didn't include her in our group.
Yep.
No reason not to. We were just unknowing. there were several girls that were just really sweet, good girls that we were friends with, but we didn't include them in the slumber parties and the things like that. And I feel so bad because at this high school reunion, Peggy and I were talking, and I was saying how I loved the high school years, and she said I hated them. I might cry about that. We could have included 10 more girls, and it would have been a happy group. When we were on the mission, one of the missionaries showed us a picture of about 30 guys, and they called it the FMOW. Before he came on his mission, it was the FMOW, Future Missionaries of the World, and it was his group.
He's now a seminary teacher somewhere.
So I think when you're young, you have to be careful to look out for other people, and it's such a natural thing to be self-centered and unaware. It was kind of the same with the boys. There were some boys that were the athletes, the macho guys, that it was easy for everybody to think they were wonderful. But there were 2 or 3 boys in our class who were not accepted in that way. Everybody thought they were dumb, and still they were my friends. One of them is still one of my best friends, and he and I have planned reunions together.
Which one is that?
Arnold.
The Norton boy?
And I shouldn't name these names, I shouldn't. But, and then another one that was not considered the top guy, you know. I went on a date with him once and we had a good time. And so, even though, you know, you don't have to have a date all the time, but it was really important to me for some reason. So I had lots of dates, but I also went out with people that, you know, the others might not have gone, other girls might not have gone with. And I'm glad I did. Anyway, back to the 12 and 13-year-old era.
Yeah.
So when I was in the 8th grade, Speck Smith lived across the street from us. He was a couple of years older. But at night, all the kids would get together and play those games I mentioned, kick the can and everything. And we all played together. And and also, that was the era of the funny books. And we had stacks of funny books at our house, and he'd come over and read all the funny books. And so I had a crush on him for several years, along with all the others. When I was a junior, I was the junior class president, and I was kind of ramrodding the prom, worked really hard. And I forgot to tell my current boyfriend from Safford that it was the prom, that he could go with me. So I didn't have a date. There I was on the day of the prom with no date. Well, Speck was in the Army at that time. He was a paratrooper. He came home on leave and we went to the prom. So it worked out just fine. We've had an ongoing kind of funny thing with him. He taught me to drive. Their family didn't have a car. And so when we went someplace, took our car, and he taught me to drive. So this was right at the time I was 16. And what else was I going to say? Oh, about him. Oh, so later on, after I'd had a year of college, a semester of college, when you came.
Ready, A?
And Ken came, he was going to university. And he came home for Christmas, and he had a date with a girl named Mary Alice Ellsworth. And I had a date with Speck. And this group of young adults, we went Christmas caroling. And we had a big army duffel bag. Was it yours?
I don't know.
We went to people's houses caroling and trick-or-treating with the duffel bag. So then we went back, time out. So after the caroling, we went back to somebody's house with our duffel bag full of goodies to eat them. And it was so funny because Mary Alice's father had put in a box of chocolates. We thought, wow. But the chocolates had worms in them.
Really?
I don't know if he knew it. They were old chocolates, and they had worms in them. It was funny.
I didn't know that you could have worms in chocolate.
I didn't know either. Maybe it weren't worms. Maybe it was bugs. But something was in the chocolates. We couldn't eat it. We couldn't eat the chocolates. It's too bad. But after that night, then Speck dated Mary Alice, and Ken and I dated. They got married that following May, and we the year after. So that was kind of fun. She was in our college group of friends, Mary Alice and her sister Carol. Carol became head of the nutrition or home something at BYU. She never married. Mary Alice died. So I think that's all about boys.
All right.
I remember going with her to this Safford boyfriend's house, and she went in and called him and told him she was marrying me.
That was a hard thing.
He was a good man. Good basketball player, too.
He was in the Navy, and we had a sort of an understanding, but that had to go by the by, and it was really hard to tell him.
And I said to my dad, when I first knew that I was interested in Leona, I said, am I under any obligation? She's got this boyfriend who's in the Navy. Do I need to not get involved in this? Is this unfair to him? His answer to me was, if you think she's who you want, you go after her. Don't worry about him.
That's right.
He was pretty tough. My dad was.
You chose wisely.
Yes. At the time, it was a hard decision, even though it was the right one.
Yeah. We're going to come back to how that happened. So.
Okay. So where are we now?
Okay, so imagine yourself standing in front of your school and you walk in the door. Tell me about what you see, hear, what's going on, who's there.
Okay, in the front door of the Thatcher High School, on the left was the principal superintendent's office and his secretary. On the right was a wall of, statues and things. Or whatever they...
Trophies and things.
Trophies. And lining the halls were lockers. We put all our stuff in the locker, and we go to the locker between each class to get the next book. Today they have to carry backpacks. I hate that. There was a assembly room straight ahead in front of the front door.
Yeah. With a sloped floor.
Sloped floor. That's where we had assemblies and what do you call them when you have rallies? Pep rallies. And
Whatever.
plays.
Yeah, plays, band concerts.
Everything. And then every fall, when the World Series was on, we could all go in there and listen to the World Series. Wasn't that funny?
That
didn't
wasn't
happen to
happening
you?
when I was there. We didn't have radio yet.
That was funny. It was there was no TV. It was just a radio.
Yeah.
But I played in the band, and I was a good student.
And she was the top student, the valedictorian.
And in everything but physics, and I had to have help in physics. So the boys helped me with my physics.
That worked out well.
It worked out well.
What kind of memories do you have of different teachers, or kind of their attitudes, or ones that kind of helped you along that you remember?
Oh, in the 5th grade we had Mr. McKellar. In the 6th grade we had Mr. Smith. And that was a low point because they believed in capital punishment. Or at least Mr. Smith did.
Physical punishment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be extreme.
Yeah.
And so one day one of the boys did something that irked him so much that he had everybody come and give this boy a swat with a ruler. And I was so mad. But I don't think, I'm sure I didn't swat. It was bad.
What Mr. Smith was that, Mom?
Ralph.
Ralph Sr.?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
yeah. That was bad. Okay. Then
Mr. Gardner?
Mr. Gardner was the band and choir teacher. What else did he teach? Teach math?
I don't remember.
I remember that. And in choir, we mostly sang popular songs, and he would give us the lyrics and we'd write them down because that's what we wanted, was the lyrics to the popular songs. I remember writing Green Eyes. My physics and I guess physics teacher was Mrs. King, and somebody described her as and at one point she was pregnant. I think her husband was in the Army or Navy or something. And she was a real skinny lady. And somebody said, well, I don't know why this went together. They said if she were a witch, she'd be a pumpkin on a broomstick, because she... Anyway. But she was a really nice lady and really a good... And Mrs. Wilhelmina Schultz was the librarian. Liked her. What was Gloria Rogers? Not Gloria. Wilma.
Wilma? She was just a teacher there.
I don't think I had her for a teacher, but when we were juniors in 1945, there wasn't girls' camp, and a bunch of us girls asked Wilma to go and be our... What do you have when you have an older person go with you?
Chaperone.
Our chaperone. We went and spent a week in the mountains with Wilma, and all of us girls. And it was during the war, and we were in the mountain in August when VJ Day came. It was kind of a significant moment. I guess that's the end. Teachers? Mr. Gateau was our principal and superintendent, and he was wonderful. He was a little guy, and he was either a Catholic or an Episcopalian. Lived among the Mormons for years. Never joined the church. He finally went to be the principal at
Flowing Wells.
Flowing Wells in Tucson, and then he came back and was the president of the college for a while. While he was the president of the college, he hired Lorenzo Flake to come and be the math physics teacher. And just recently, the Flakes told us that they had the big inspiration that they were to do the Gateau's temple work. And so they, and we, we didn't know the Flakes during our high school years when we were involved with Mr. Gateau. But they were involved with him later, and he was wonderful to them. It was really neat. And so they found out his grandson's address in Tucson and got in touch with him and asked if it was okay if they did their temple work. He says, well, I'll have to ask my aunt, who is their child. And he did, and she said, well, if they didn't join the church while they were still alive, why would they now? Why would they want the temple work done? But she says, it's okay. So they did their temple work. I thought that was a pretty neat thing to do.
What was important to you as a teenager?
Boys.
Boy.
Were there things that were important to you that other than boys?
Other than boys. Making good grades.
Mm-hmm.
Having a group of girls to run around with. Having a date on Friday night. How important is that? It's a weird thing as I remember it. Why weren't other things important?
That's very common to be focused on that.
While we were teenagers, Gina Alpin and I took organ lessons from, what's her name? Stoll. Bernice Stoll, who was the best pianist organist in the valley. She gave us organ lessons, and at lunchtime we would go take turns going to the church and practicing the organ. And then she and I took turns playing for sacrament meeting. So that was fun.
What did you do that was rebellious as a teenager?
Don't tell.
I shouldn't tell. Nothing with my parents, except that I just don't think that I was very nice to my brothers. Dad always had them work. And I felt like it was that he was being too hard on them and not on me. That wasn't rebellious, that was just an observation. And of course during those years that's when we rode the horse. Gerald and I kind of took turns with the horse. And that horse, I would go up to Mona's on the horse, up First Avenue. And at the railroad track, there was a house that the Mexicans lived in, and the horse would not go there, past that house. I had to get off and lead it across, and then we could go on. Isn't that weird?
What was the most trouble you were in as a teenager?
Frank Hughes.
Well, was that trouble? My dad and Mama only told me no twice in my life that I can remember. One was when I was dating Frank Hughes, and he was not acceptable to them, and they forbade me to go with him another time. And I got mad and yelled, but I quit. The other time they told me no was when, after Dad and I were dating, and he was going to go to work in Pendleton for the summer, and I wanted to go and get a job too, and they said no. So okay. I went to Salt Lake and got a job that summer.
Tell me about that.
Denelda Ferguson and I went, and I got a job in the, what was the name of that place?
Was it a big copper company?
It was a big mining company, and I was a comptometer operator. I had taken business classes in college.
What is a comptometer operator?
It's a hand-operated
Writing machine.
number thing.
Okay.
You put the numbers in and you pull the handle.
And then you flip it over, pull the handle again, flip it two more. They were about this big. It was the modern
Calculator.
calculator, yeah.
Yeah.
My job was to, the bills came to me, and most of the bills would say 10 or 15% off if paid by a certain date. So I would figure out that percentage so that they could pay the lesser amount.
And where did you stay during that time?
Oh, stayed with,
Aunt, what was her name?
my grandfather's sister and their twin girls, Frida and Fonda.
What was her name?
Uncle Joe and Aunt
Nettie? No.
Joe and Nettie were these. This was Joe and somebody. Heavens, I should remember the name. Anyway, yeah, I stayed with them. And then when the summer was over, Dad came and we rode home together with
With
Aunt Thelma and Vanda. And Vanda was, what, 8 or 9? And she kept saying, I want a balloon, I want a balloon. Most obnoxious.
Mom and I said, if we ever get children, we'll smack them when they do that. But we didn't.
My kids will never do that.
I was there during the summer of 1947, which was the
Big celebration.
centennial of the crossing of the plains and arriving in Salt Lake. And across from my office was the Tribune. And it had a great big billboard. And every day it would show where the saints were until they arrived with lights and things. Kind of fun.
Tell me about the impact that the war had on you during your teenage years.
Not so much on me because I was younger than our boys didn't go off to the war.
Some of them joined up.
Some of the ones a year older went. But my group was just a little bit young and didn't go. Most of them didn't go. Yeah, some of them went in the service after the war. But the impact of the war was the commodities we couldn't get. We had to have war stamps. What are they called?
Yeah. I can't remember how they...
You had booklets.
To buy a tire.
Booklets
to buy
of
sugar,
stamps to buy sugar and tires and
and gasoline.
gasoline. And if you used up your stamps, you didn't get any more. So, and when I graduated from high school, Mother made my dress out of a parachute, nylon parachute. It's the first nylon we had.
Yeah.
Beautiful dress. So, the war's impact on me was minimal, except, because Dad went and came back and that kind of thing.
Okay. What kind of work was expected of you around the house, or?
Well, the boys always had to come home and work in the field. And
It's time to go.
it is.
Good.
All right. So, what chores were you okay with, and which ones did you mind?
Well, as I said, the boys always went up and worked in the field and chopped cotton, and so we all did. but it made my head ache so bad. It probably made theirs too. But they let me come home and do the housework. I feel really bad about that. I just couldn't stay with it. It was so horrible. And they were there all the time, up and down the rows.
This was in the summertime?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because in those days, you chopped the cotton out to the width of the hoe.
Right.
So that there was a stalk of cotton about every 6 inches or so. Nowadays, they don't worry about that. They just let them grow however many they will. And besides that, there are no weeds these days, so you just don't have any choppers.
Yeah.
Very strange, but yeah. So I just did, the normal stuff. Usually, Mother would say, "I'll do the dishes if you'll practice the piano." Oh my goodness. So anyway.
Was that a good thing? Did you like practicing the piano?
Well, yeah, better than washing dishes. And so, yeah. But I don't remember specific chores.
Okay.
I hope I made my bed and stuff like that.
How did you get your spending money?
I can't remember when it was going to college or if I was still in high school. I worked at a drugstore a few hours a day, making sodas and ice cream stuff. And I didn't use much spending money. I never bought a candy bar. I never bought a milkshake or anything.
Is that because the boys bought them for you?
No, we didn't indulge ourselves like the kids do these days. Nowadays, I see them getting a drink every day. And yeah, I'm amazed, because you don't have to.
How did your relationship with your parents change as you went through your teenage years?
My dad was always really good to me. And Mom was too. I got along just fine. But as I said, I'm sure I was very self-centered, and they had to put up with a lot of junk.
Sounds like a typical teenager.
Dear.
Do you remember any specific times of spending time with your mom, your dad during a teenager?
Didn't do that much. We didn't interact, except like at mealtime and things like that.
Okay.
We went on one vacation to the Grand Canyon. And must have been when I was a junior. But that's the only vacation we ever went on. We went trips to Mesa to visit the grandparents that lived down there. That's it.
Tell me about the Grand Canyon vacation.
That's all I remember. We went. There's a picture.
Just your immediate family?
Yeah. I don't remember anything about it.
Did you just go to the rim? Did you
Yeah.
hike down in?
No, we didn't hike.
Okay.
Maybe a few feet. That's all.
Okay. What did you hate to hear as a teenager?
I had a happy childhood, a happy teenage years. I didn't, everything was great. So I don't remember anything that was negative.
You don't remember?
Oh, yes, one time. I had a new coat. It was a long, pale blue one with a black collar. And one day when it was time for me to come home from school, I couldn't find my coat. I looked and looked and looked for it. And it was in the garbage can in the girls' room. I never found out who put it there. So somebody had a peeve against me, and I never knew who or what.
Did you have any worries or fears as a teenager? that you recall?
Not really.
No? Okay.
Not really.
Would you describe yourself as shy, confident?
I'm a mixture because I think I'm an introvert. Because I would rather read a book than socialize. But during the teenage years, I socialized because that was the thing to do, I guess. So even now, it's ridiculous, but sometimes, like if I'm on the street and somebody's coming, I'll turn and walk the other way or duck into the doorway instead of having to have a conversation. That's so dumb because it's exactly the opposite of how you're supposed to interact with people, especially in a missionary sense.
Describe a time that was very exciting for you as a teenager. Or some experience that holds, a lot of feeling for you. Not all the questions have answers, so that's fine.
I guess not. We'll let that one go.
Yeah.
Everything was great, and nothing stands out that much.
Tell me about your relationship with your siblings, with your brothers, during the teenage years.
Oh, for the most part, it was good, but Gordon and I had some clashes. One time I got so mad at him, I cut up a painting I had done. But at the same time, at school, I would stand up for him. But other than that, we did just fine.
What kind of interactions did you have with your brothers?
Ate the meals together. We all played together outside in the evenings, like with the neighborhood kids. It was not an age discriminating group. But I don't remember specifically. I might at some other time, but not right now.
Okay. Do you recall as a teenager something where you felt a sense of triumph or accomplishment, or hey, I did that?
Well, I was the valedictorian, but it was just kind of a thing that came along. I also got the scholarship award at EA one year, but I was embarrassed by that because when I went to EA, it was after the war, and all the men who had been in the service came. There were some that were 4 or 5 years older than I. And they came back to college after the war as mature people. And they took the math and science classes, and I took the English and business classes, and I got the best grade, so I got the award. But that was so embarrassing because it was a no-brainer. So that was to me a sad thing. I would rather not have had that.
Did you get a sense of accomplishment from your artwork?
A little bit.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit. I always liked to draw from 5th grade on. But after we got married, I kind of quit. There were other things that were more important.
Mm-hmm. Where did you get your sense of confidence and, yeah, I can do this, and things to draw on from a self?
You know, I'm not sure unless my folks gave it to me by thinking I was okay, thinking I was wonderful when I wasn't.
I'm sure you were.
But yeah, I always was confident, even though I was an introvert and unsure.
Like
How's
everybody.
that for a mixed bag?
That's everybody on the planet. All right, that's all my teenage questions.
Okay.